Good evening, everybody. Welcome to LessonPix Live. I'm Bill Binko, and it's my wife and co-founder, Lori Binko. We founded LessonPix together 12 years ago. I looked it up today.
Did you?
It was 12 years ago. And we're silencing our phones.
Yes,
which,
yes.
You know, it's about time we do that. So,
but I did good not talking prior to coming on. So usually I'm saying something silly, and you're like, "We're live."
We're live. That's right. So all good. So I hope you're joining us on either Facebook or YouTube. If you are, and you type in comments, we can see them and respond to them. We'll get your questions as we go along or at the end. We have two fabulous guests today.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about occupational therapy. We're going to talk about, it is OT month. April is OT month. We barely made it in OT month to do our session.
You were a little busy this month.
I was a little busy. I was in a hospital and
but we made
losing
it.
weight. I had to lose some weight. So we did. We have been busy this month, and we're happy that we're able to get this in this month, which is great. So we
love our OTs.
We do. We have always done. We always loved working with OTs. They are one of the more interesting specialists that we work with,
yes.
And certainly something I think most people don't get it. Right?
Yeah, the breadth of what they do.
Right, and when you should bring them in, and what you can get out of it for your clients and your students. So I'm thrilled to have the folks we have. We have Judy Schoonover, and we have Alyssa Wern, and we have stuff from a couple other OTs, who neither one of which could be here, but we're going to show other stuff from OTs as well.
All right.
Okay.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and I haven't prepped Lori at all for this, so she's going to dance with me. So, all right. So let's start by introducing our two guests here. And we're kind of playing it fast and loose here, right? We're going to
fast and loose.
Fast and loose.
That's how we roll.
That's exactly right. So I've got Alyssa Wern, OT, occupational therapist from Gainesville, Florida, working at Alachua County Schools. We've done a ton together over the years at AT Makers. Judy and I have too. But you're in a school setting primarily, but really specialized kiddos. You are, when I think of you, I think of the OT who deals with really low incidence. You have the toughest kids, right? The SMA kids, the CP kids.
I love the super interesting kiddos that maybe the out of the box solution, the in the box solution doesn't work with, and you got to get creative with. But
gotcha.
It's only a tiny facet of what OT is.
Right. And I think that when you talk to OTs, most of them find a niche and dig in, right? And Judy, you are now up in Michigan, but for all the time I've known you, you've been working in Loudoun County, Virginia, as an OT in a middle school, correct? At least for as long as I've known you.
No, all the schools. I'm echoing.
We will work on that.
Sorry about that. That sounds much better. Okay. No, I worked from preschool on to graduation. And previous to that, I worked for California Children's Services in California, where when I started practicing, kids weren't even included in the public schools. So I've had a long career. I taught elementary school as well. And so I feel like occupational therapy is a perfect marriage with education, and that there should always be an OT in public schools, and that we have a lot to offer along in partnership with all the other educators and the paraprofessionals to make things as easy and as multidimensional as possible, so everyone not only is included but is valued and is having fun. So,
well, I think you two are fantastic people to bring in, and I think we're going to start with Alyssa. So I'm going to so Judy, I'm going to turn off your screen for a second. When I do, I can't hear you, so wave and yell at me if you need me. And we're gonna chat with Alyssa first. We're gonna get her elevator pitch on this, on OT, and then we'll come back to you and we'll talk about some of the specialized stuff that both of you do. Okay.
Sounds good.
So let me I don't want to kick you from the studio. I just want to. There we go. There we
We
go.
want her to hang out.
We don't want to kick Judy out. It said
What's
kick
this?
Kick her from the studio. No, I don't want to kick her from.
That
the studio.
seems kind of harsh. I
That
mean,
seems
we,
harsh,
we
doesn't
like
it?
her. We don't want to
Not
kick
nice
her
at
out.
all. So, so Alyssa, thanks for joining us.
Of course.
So give me the nickel tour. Tell me, when people say, "What do you do?" What do you tell them?
So broadly, what I tell them about occupational therapy kind of probably came from an OT month terminology that AOTA came out with. It's skills for the job of living. So I think when we're talking about occupational therapy, what I love about the profession is its breadth and depth. So you can be working supporting parents and preemie babies in the NICU, and you can be working and supporting patients who are in their geriatric years in a skilled nursing facility or assisted living, and their caregivers and everything in between. So its depth and breadth really allows us to specialize first, but also really allows us to focus in on the whole person, to really look holistically at whatever setting you're in, at that person, and what skills they may need help with to be more independent. It's all about independence is really at the core of why we would use a specific tool or we'd want to use a specific intervention. So in terms of the broad scope elevator pitch, that's that. I can school system pitch you too, but that's the broad picture.
Well, I think the big thing people need to understand is it's not about preparing for work. Right?
No,
the word
we do
occupational
not find people jobs, which is the #1 meme that's out there about occupational therapy.
Right. No, it's about, so occupation meaning things you want to do. So you go in and you say, what is this person capable of? What do they want to do? What is their goal for the next thing that they're doing in life? Whether that is physical movement or in the case of like my friend Chris, he's setting up his house to be independent in a power chair, right? He could use the help of somebody who knows about switch placement and fatigue, like everything you do. That's helping him with the occupation of living, as you said. Right?
Absolutely. It's skills for the job of living, everything from self-care, being able to toilet and shower independently, to energy conservation, to being able to pick up papers and pens and do the job of writing.
That was a dig at me.
It was absolutely not a dig at you. I love everyone should implement correct ergonomics and energy conservation in their life.
Okay, I have been lectured recently about energy conservation because I still have lingering pneumonia after COVID. So I have no energy. And Alyssa, I will tell you that the biggest thing we did was I'm back at sea level. I was not okay on the mountaintop. That was completely not okay. So thank you for your advice. It was followed very much. Let me bring Judy in for a second. So Judy, is there anything that we missed on that intro there?
No, I think it's exactly right. And I would have used the same analogy, skills for the job of living. I used to do a whole lot of whole group activities in the schools just because that was the way I rolled. And I didn't believe in taking kids out of the classroom and down the hall in order to work with them unless it was something very personal. And so I would come into the classroom and I would introduce myself and tell the students that I was an occupational therapist. And I would ask them if they knew what it meant. And of course, they would go right to, oh, you help people find jobs. And I said, not really, but what's an occupation? And they would kind of figure out eventually that it was a job. And I said, well, what's a therapist? And they would eventually come up with something along the line of helper. And that's exactly what we do. We are job helpers. We are not job finders, but we are the person that helps people do the kinds of things that they need to or want to do. And so I would then ask the students, because I was usually in the classroom, well, what's your job? And they would say, well, I have to turn in my homework, or I have to do my handwriting, or I have to remember to take my backpack home. And I'd say, right, those are your jobs. And when someone needs help doing their job, that's when they may work more individually with an occupational therapist. But that occupational therapists were also available for everybody, and that it was just holistically looking at the culture and the climate of the environment, and making suggestions that were for the good of all. And we know that, especially in education, we've adopted the philosophy of universal design for learning, and occupational therapists are excellent, excellent consultants at looking at student diversity and figuring out the pathways that work for everybody. So that's my elevator pitch.
I think they're both awesome. I think they cover what we're talking about here. So we are on a LessonPix show. I'm not going to jump right into LessonPix for a minute, but both of you, I know, use visuals a ton in your practice. So we're going to talk a little bit about the ways we've done that, the ways we've seen OTs use LessonPix. But I guess, Alyssa, do you have anything? So when you're doing work, a lot of so let's talk for a minute about how I got to meet both of you. So I met both of you through AT Makers. So I run a charity called AT Makers, which takes up
different shirt,
green shirt, right? So I don't have a green shirt. I probably should have worn that. But yes, you see me in a green shirt. That's when I'm doing my AT Makers work. I make things, like these and switch interfaces and Cap Touch stuff and joysticks and interfaces and things like geeky stuff that helps people with assistive technology needs. And these two ladies have been phenomenal on the tech side, the assistive technology side, kind of very differently, right? Alyssa, you've worked with me on the IntelliKey stuff more than anything, on reviving old technology for people who still need it, keeping IntelliKeys alive for the people who use it on a daily basis for their occupation, how they live their lives. And we've done that in terms of toy adaptations and working with Roaring Riptide there in Gainesville, my robotics team. And then Judy, you and I met in a conference at ATIA when you were showing with Mark Nichols, how you made an assistive technology club at the middle school level and got these kids making all kinds of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about those kinds of things that you're working on. And then eventually we're going to come back into what our users might care about, which is how do OTs use visuals? But let's start. Judy, I know I saw you go off and pick up goodies. Do you have goodies to show?
I do have goodies to show, but I want to give a little bit of background too. And some of it may have to do with generations as well, because I think Alyssa does things that have a little bit more technology than I tend to do. And it's not necessarily just generational, but when I went to OT school, we had to make everything. There wasn't a lot of AT equipment. The equipment that was out there was called adaptive equipment, and many times we were making it. There was a book called Handling the Young CP Child at Home by Nancy Finney that was sort of the Bible, because it showed you how to make corner seats and lap tables and things like that. So when I started practicing, well, first of all, in OT school, I took woodworking, I took ceramics, I took general crafts, I took weaving, because a lot of OT's foundation was in mental health, and giving people meaningful occupations made them feel better, made them heal better, made them move on with their lives. And so when I started practicing, I was making a lot of my equipment, and that never left me. And then I did find that oftentimes when I started making the equipment, it became the prototype for something a lot more high tech. When I first started practicing, I made wheelchair inserts out of notebooks, and I made controller cups out of tuna cans, and things like that. One of the first mobilized wheelchair I ever worked with, the child wore a golden bear helmet, and I put this little metal rod that went forward into the former joystick container that was now a tuna can, so that the metal rod would fit in the tuna can, and she could use her head to drive the chair. And once we figured out that worked, plus we wedged her with a notebook and put a little can between her legs because we didn't have a pummel. Once we did that, the wheelchair vendor came up and he customized an insert that fit exactly her. And so that's always been my mode of operation, is customizing. And then sometimes we could go higher, way higher, but oftentimes the customization that started out low tech was the thing that resonated at first and became a door opener to people who might be resistant or fearful of using something that was a little bit more expensive, and they were afraid to break it and they didn't want to touch it, and only the quote expert could work with the child using it. And so that's sort of the way I evolved with the kinds of things that I worked on with the Maker Club, is making things out of everyday materials. And I don't want to hog a lot of time. I'm just going to show a couple of things. Here's a milk jug handle that becomes a handle for a paintbrush that someone without a lot of grip can hold onto and participate in art. This is non-threatening to the art teacher. It's non-threatening to the parapro. Everybody could benefit by using it. It's not a specialized piece of equipment that only the one child can use. So everybody in the classroom could use it if they wanted to. On the other side, we've got a little stamper, so they can also use it like this to stamp. We've got a squeeze bottle that turns into a larger handle that is easier to grasp. So those were the kinds of things that we started coming up with to kind of desensitize people to the idea that everything had to be really special, really expensive, and only an expert could use it.
It's never the kids. It's never the end users that have that fear. It's the teachers and the paras and it's the folks who end up in this. They're not intending to, but they end up as a kind of a gatekeeper. They're keeping people from being able to do it because of their own. I don't want him to get hurt, or I don't want to use something that we made, or I should be using something commercial, right?
Sometimes, but I also found that when kids could make their own equipment, because I worked with a lot of kids with sensory issues, and when they could make their own tea stools and squeeze balls and stretchy things, they took ownership of the equipment. It wasn't something that was handed over to them and said, here, you're going to feel better if you squeeze this ball. It was, they kind of determined the kinds of tools they needed, and they got a hand in creating them. They could pick out the colors, they could pick out the sizes, and they were more willing to use something that they had some buy-in to. And we also, OTs became supply closets for a lot of educators. And I found when we could turn over the skills, teaching them to make raised line papers with Wiki Stick, or teaching them to make color-coded paper with Microsoft Word, or one of my favorite ones was they always wanted us to hand them over the pencil grips and the loopy scissors. So showing them how they could make their own pencil grips and their own loopy scissors. Here's an example with a zip tie duct taped onto a regular pair of scissors, and it becomes a pair of loopy scissors. So when teachers were all of a sudden empowered that they could do this themselves, then they were more willing to try a lot more things, and so were the kids. So I could go on, and I think it's probably somebody else's turn to talk.
Well, let's do a couple questions just to finish this part out. You took that and created a club of preteens who did nothing but make assistive technology after school, right?
Yes, and that was the brainchild of Mark Nichols. He was our coordinator and our supervisor at the time of our assistive technology team. I also worked with a wonderful occupational therapist. Her name is Deborah Schwind, and she was working in the trenches with a child with significant motor disabilities, and he was included in the art class, but that meant he got wheeled in with a parapro and sat in the corner, and the parapro did the projects. So she started developing these tools, and at the same time I was consulting with art teachers across the district in my role as an assistive technology trainer, talking about how they could modify the art activities to be more inclusive, so that the parapro didn't have to do the project. And Debbie and I together put our heads together, and we came up with this toolkit. We wrote a grant. The whole art kit cost about $7.50 to reproduce. And we got our AT Maker Club to make the art kits for every art teacher in our school district. And then we started doing training programs.
And we've made a ton of them at ATIA and just all over the place now. And that guide is published. It's free for people who want, and we could find a link, and we'll put a link in here when we're all done, because you'll send me a link, right?
Sure thing.
Yeah. So we love that. And again, that's probably not something that people think of when they think about an OT, is how useful that art kit, how motivating it is, how many different when you look at it, are there 38 things in it or 45 things in it? There's
I don't know, because we keep adding to it. So
Yeah.
it just kind of evolves with the need
Right.
and the interest.
Gotcha. And so we're now you are officially retired. Are you officially retired?
I'm no longer employed with Loudoun County. I have retired from Loudoun County Public Schools, but I'm still a consultant. So I do some OT and some AT consulting.
And we occasionally call on you for our stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe we'll do more of that. If we ever can do AOTA in person, maybe we can do more of that. So
and see, the Art Toolkit was presented at AOTA in person by Deborah and myself a couple of years ago, and it's been presented in various formats at ATIA and other conferences because it resonates when people can do it themselves and they can do it with dollar store hacks and things like that. It's something that's available, especially with COVID. And I know we're not talking again, but with COVID, that set a new framework for everybody because kids went home from school, stayed home from school, and all that special equipment maybe stayed in the building and they were elsewhere. So people needed to figure out other solutions so that they could do the things that were special to them.
So I do want to make sure before we go back to Alyssa.
Mute me.
No, you do know that we added I wanted to make sure you knew this.
Oh, I wanted to bring that up to LessonPix. LessonPix added OT maker tools, and they are so awesome because when we make up directions to show kids how to make up their own equipment, we can put those images in so they know which tools they need to collect and and how many of the joints they need, or whether they need duct tape or whether they need PVC pipe. And we can give them a visual recipe for how to construct their own equipment. And these were very valuable tools for us.
Yeah, and you can use the PowerPoint plugin if you want to, or the copy and paste them into Google Docs or whatever you're working with, or use the steps. You make a visual schedule. Here are the 4 things, right?
That's right. And use it as a foldable, because I love your foldable templates too, so that people could look at the first step, close the door. Look at the second step, close the door. Because a lot of our kids have difficulty with organization and seeing that sequencing thing one at a time, or using the wheels that you have where you can just look at one of the windows in the wheel at a time, just helps it organize so the task doesn't become overwhelming.
That is our dial template.
Exactly right.
Yep.
I love the dial template. And I love the bracelet. I was going to wear my bracelet because I think that the bracelet, the wearable things that kind of give kids some cute cues and reminders that everybody in the class can have a wearable. So it's not just the kid that maybe needs it, it's everybody.
And there is a new, somewhat new frame schedule that puts a frame around basically a strip schedule, but it moves the frame so it isolates that under schedules.
I love that. And then you've got the eye gaze stuff. The thing that I like the most is your checklist, though, because now I am making sensory kits out of tubs and PVC pipe, and then you have a checklist. So when they're digging through the sensory tub, you're going, I see something red, I see something blue, I see something that you can drink from, and you load that sensory tub with those kinds of things, and you have the opportunity to do all sorts of speech therapy at the same time.
Yeah.
So yay!
All right.
Now I'm done.
Now we're gonna kick you out.
Alyssa,
Bye.
she's coming on.
Poor Alyssa's like. So you guys present together all the time, so I'm sure. This
is the pleasure of co-presenting with Judy multiple times over the last year. Love every opportunity because I continue to learn things. And I mean, as she was talking, I was being kind of tapping on my Post-it note in front of OT that she just covered, that explanation of all the areas that we have to work on, and stop playing. But I think it's a very clear picture how low tech and higher tech are all within the scope of occupational therapy. You're muted, Bill. I can't hear you because you're muted.
I'm muted because you were breaking up. We're trying to get everything off except for you. It's all good. My bad. Let's talk a little bit about not just what you're doing, because we talked a little bit of that earlier, but like, do you have visuals that you can show that you've done and things like that?
I do. I did
Look at
come
that.
prepared to this party.
So just so you guys know, if you're ever on the show, the way this works is I ask you in the middle of the night, I can put Judy back on and I'm going to leave her muted, but she's going to say, middle of the night, I'm going to shoot out an email that says, hey, can you be on next Thursday? And you're going to say yes. And I'm not going to say anything else to you. And we're going to start. And 10 minutes before the show, I'm going to say, hey, did you bring stuff? And if you say no, you have to run down to your basement and get the stuff. So does that sound right, Alyssa?
It is 100% correct. And yet we still keep coming back.
That's right, because they love us.
There's some method to the madness for sure. But yeah, so I use a ton of visuals for both pieces of my roles in terms of occupational therapy and in terms of supporting communication and other access needs through assistive technology. And I think, for me, it's all about how many tools can I make available to a team, a student, or whoever, and widen their toolbox, and yet also have them have the support to know what tool to use when.
Right.
And I think that's a big piece of it. So yeah, I'm more than happy to share my screen and
sure, let's do this
and show you what's up there. So we'll start kind of at the end of the story. So this is something that I asked for that was not available. I have a student, let me make it a little smaller. I have a student that was working on, and you're going to see an error in it, and it's going to bother you, but
yes,
I can see one.
Yeah, you're using the the new Lexan font, and it is a little bit large for that layout.
Yes, it is. It is. But that's okay. So I have a student that's working on addition, and she had a picture up in her classroom of addition words, but it was really complex and it was really difficult for her. And we were working at breaking down tasks. So I couldn't find exactly what I needed and reached out to Beth, who reached out to Lori, and we kind of used it's a mat place. It's not a placemat template. It's a themed mat.
Themed mat.
And used, while you could use the plus sign for other things, we just kind of used it to capture, and I used I had to create some symbols on my own because one more and all together doesn't come up right now in LessonPix, but it's just a really quick visual for her to have right available that she can look and see, okay, what are some of those keywords that mean I'm going to add?
Yep.
So that's one. And then in true OT form, I do lots and lots of pre-writing, especially with my littles. And in pre-K, sometimes they're coming in and we're really just working on pre-writing strokes, right? But what I love about LessonPix is the ability to take, okay, this is great. I've got my pre-writing pictures, but to take it and not just have cards that they could, search through a tactile bin to find and then go up to the whiteboard and do that stroke. I can take that same setup and I make dice that they can use to roll. And as kids learn their strokes, I have them gather 4 or 5 rolls and then figure out what letters they can make from those strokes.
Very cool.
Right? So if you roll 2 of these, you can make a lowercase o. Or if you roll this plus a tall line, you can make a lowercase d.
Nice.
Or
right.
Okay.
Or Q.
So
who puts tails on their Q's anymore?
Depends on the curriculum you use. So again, I use that same set of symbols and make 3 or 4 different activities. These are just letter cards that I gave to those pre-K teachers to help reinforce. The version I said gave them don't say letter pieces on them, but it's what I called it real quick when I was pulling up another copy. But again, being able to very quickly take one set of symbols and make 3 to 4 different activities with it.
Yep.
So I also, in terms of tools and toolbox, this is one of a newer one that I've made. We're really working with a couple of our students to be able to self-regulate or begin that process. And I don't expect a kid to be able to know what they need and why they need it and do it just like that. This is a visual not only for the student, but to prompt the staff what they need to be vocalizing for that student to help them learn, oh, you know what, when my body's tired, I could use this or this or this, and that could help my body wake up. And I'm also coaching the staff about what your body feels like when it's tired. What would you see outwardly? All those sensory regulation pieces that OTs very much work on, with a means to an end, not just so he can play with sensory tools or a stress ball. They're fun, but so that he can be engaged and participate in what's happening in class.
Yeah.
And then in my AT hat, I do a lot of communication support. So we're working a lot on core vocabulary, and I do pull the core bingo cards a lot, just because you can do a lot of versatile stuff with them in terms of, you know, you could play straight bingo like everybody else does. You can also do, I'm reading a book, and how, you know, whoever can identify 3 words from the book as we're reading the book can do it. But they, you know, maybe they're identifying them on their device, and student B over here is using a core board. But because I can make however many cards I want to at once, I can have multiple kids working on this project at once, and I don't ever use the draw sheet to draw them. Maybe I just like to buck the system and not follow the rules. But I almost always use those draw sheets for some other activity that I'm doing.
Gotcha.
Since I know I'm targeting core.
Do you do like, I know you used to do this, and Jill used to do this, and other OT. Do you use Play-Doh and other things as your place markers? So
absolutely. So they've got to pull off a piece of the Play-Doh and roll it in a ball, and then smash it on. That's their favorite part. Smash it on top of the bingo that they want to select.
Exactly.
Working on those. Yeah, working on those little itty bitty hand muscles, those intrinsic hand muscles.
Right.
This is one of those first ones. Oh, see, that's what happens when I get rid of my toolbars, is that I lose the ability to very quickly change the zoom on this. So this is another example of taking a template that was made for one thing and using it for another. So this is a story template, right, Lori?
It is a drawing page.
Drawing page. So we used it for the steps of a math problem. So that same student that we were working with those addition words on, here's what you do first. This is laminated. So she's using a whiteboard marker, and then a little piece of a paper towel to dry it, because I want her to work on her 3-fingered grasp. And I'm once an OT, always an OT. And so she's doing the steps and writing them out, and she just needs that extra cue on the bottom. She does her steps and she shows it to her peer or to her para, and then she wipes it off and does the next problem. So non-conventional use of the template, but and I think this one is actually shared for free.
In the sharing center?
The sharing center, yeah.
Very cool. And by the way, just you'll go back for a second. One tip that people don't know, but obviously you do, is that if you want, one of the ways you can put that blank space up there is you can we literally have a picture called blank, and you can drag it in any spot you want to leave blank. If you put it there, it'll leave it blank. If you search for the word blank, you'll get it.
I have done that before.
I know. Or you just say only put, this is always blank, isn't it?
That is, it's a
in this template specifically.
Sorry. But if you ever want any other sections to have a blank one, you can always use the blank box.
The blank picture.
Yep. So
this is one that we used a lot during distance learning when we were using some of the play tools. So doing zones of regulation work is that beginning part of them being able to kind of figure out what zone are they in. None of the zones are bad. We all exist in all of those zones. I've probably done it all within the last hour and a half. We just want to be in the right zone for our job. And so getting them to sort, I would have my play tools up with my pictures for all of the pictures that are, you know, a person running or a person about to fall asleep, and have them kind of begin that guided sort. And then the last one that is super OT specific, one of those misnomers out there, and especially in school-based practice or pediatrics, is that we are handwriting teachers. We are not handwriting teachers. Our job really is to look at the underlying skills that can affect things like handwriting. And there's a lot of visual processing pieces. You know, you could be looking at visual memory or sequencing or closure. Like, can you tell your D is a D and it's not, you know, kind of hanging out there with the big gap at the bottom? All those underlying skills that build up your fine motor and your visual motor coordination. And, you know, being able to pick out from a crowded field is a part of that picture. You know, being able to, the big fancy word is figure ground. So being able to kind of discern the thing you're looking for from either a busy background or other pieces there. I dropped in the core vocabulary words. This isn't necessarily what I would do in a figure ground short in the classroom, but just so that you can kind of see, you know, more is down here. I want them to either find it. Sometimes I do use a figure ground sort that has some relation to the book we're working on, so that it's a little thematic, but sometimes it's just totally for fun, and it's, you know, a pretty background that's got birds and things, and we're just working on identifying and finding words in our communication system, whatever that is, and we use this as kind of a playful way to work on that skill in a way that's not arduous and boring. So
very cool. I'm so glad you brought those.
You are quite welcome. You can stop sharing my screen because I've run out of examples.
That's all good. Let's bring back Judy. Hi, Judy.
Hi there. How are you?
Good. So Alyssa, thank you very much. That actually was better than I expected on showing off visual supports.
You invite me to the party, I bring it. Come on.
That's right. I'm with you. And Judy, thank you for bringing the art stuff and all the PVC. I saw. So you guys didn't all see this, but I saw Judy pulled out all kinds of PVC stuff right at the end there. But I have, we do have a couple other things if we want to before we go. So originally I have two other OTs that we work with, Andrea and Jill, who have been our, so Andrea works here at Minor Achievements. And
so does Jill.
And so does Jill. And Jill also worked with you at your school before you left your school.
Years ago, yes.
So they are like long-term LessonPix OT type people. Before we even knew you two, we had Jill. I mean, we had Jill from the beginning.
Yep.
And
Jill found interesting ways to bring us into the district and say, hey, we can use this particularly for visual schedules.
Yep. Yeah.
And empowering students to
lots of
choose
things
their
along those
activities.
lines.
Yep.
So we do have, if I can figure out how to effectively show it, that's not it. We do have something old.
What I was going to say is about these four OTs is I can't imagine four very
different
jobs.
Yeah.
That I'm always amazed that you guys have the same job, but in truth, your word of independence is the bottom line. And it's so individualized for each student to be independent in whatever aspect that they want to.
I mean, Andrea does a ton of work in sensory integration.
Andrea is very focused on sensory and executive functioning, as well as working with families. She's phenomenal with families, whereas Jill is much more traditional school-based OT, but her expertise is the little guys, getting them motivated. They get excited to go to OT, and the things that she gets them to do is just jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
So
well, again, and the big word besides independence is participation, because you can be independent in isolation. But our whole point is that we want our kids to be together. We want an inclusive environment with participation by all.
Exactly. And to be fair, she did push in and pull out with those students.
But you were in an inclusive classroom. I mean,
yes.
So
we had an inclusive classroom, and it was great to have eyes on even the gen ed kids, to have that OT in the room, just as the whole class was working on a project.
You're working on a lot of the same stuff. You're always working, crossing the midline and all
reflexes,
your stuff.
All kinds of.
And that's what we've been promoting. AOTA promotes that, and I think a lot of school-based practitioners promote that, is that we are one of a school cadre of individuals that are working towards the same goal, and that we should be, all together and working together and pulling together and collaborating.
And I will say the other thing that Jill did very well And she's not here, but boy, we're talking her up. But she also would co-treat with the SLP. She just had a baby.
She has a good excuse.
She just, but she would co-treat with the SLP. So whenever they polled, because my class was so big of 20 kids and very stimulating, when they'd pull, 4 or 5 kids from each of their caseload to get that small group. It's still that peer social interaction.
Right. And there's a time and a place for pulling, and don't get me wrong, but again, when there can be that collaboration, and I know Alyssa and I have talked about this, I used to collaborate with the guidance counselor and the SLP and the PE teacher, even the cafeteria folks, so that everybody was on the same page when working for all of our kids.
And I'll be honest, sometimes the most unlikely staff.
Oh, you muted her.
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
Say that again.
Sometimes the most unlikely staff member turns into being your biggest ally. And sometimes it's, honest to God, in a lot of places, it's the custodian. He is the magic key to adjusting your students' desks if they need to be higher or lower, or finding that just right piece of equipment because he knows the closet that it's hanging out in that you need for that student. So again, it's about we're one member of a huge team. And really, I think our specialized skill set lends itself well to kind of play that detective lens, but looking at it from that real independence and participation perspective.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
So I want to show this. I love what you did on this day.
Okay.
So this is an old presentation of Lori's I've had forever. And you guys are going to love it, because this is what
I don't know if you've seen this.
This is what Lori's classroom looked like on September 19th.
It's International Talk Like a Pirate Day,
right?
Which if you're an SLP, you love the art. But it is a very motivating theme for young children. And every year, we talk this.
We blacked out
it's
faces.
Just one day, but we did a lot of motor group activities, embedding speech, social, cognitive, everything all together in this Pirate Day. We did do the obstacle course, this type of system, once a week, every week. But this was a special themed one.
So you started with a map of the.
That is our treasure map, which is placed up on a smart board where you can trace the different activities that the students are going to participate in. So they started, looking through the looking glass to see where they're going to go, which is standing on a seesaw board. There it is. And so that's the first activity where they would spy around the room and name things they saw. So as on that smart board, you can see exactly what they're going to do. And then as they do it, they have it in their head and they're ready for it, the planning, the steps. And in the end, we can review the things they did and what was their favorite. So much language in there as well.
I was going to say, are you sure you're not an OT?
So
those are great OT activities.
Yeah.
This one is just
the PT likes it
rich
too.
with motor planning, because the kids would help build this obstacle course prior, made with the classroom blocks. And then they had to swab the deck by sweeping the ball through the obstacle course and get it to the other side. And again, that part you were talking about, Judy, where they engage in the making of it, makes it even another level of more powerful. Of course, walking the balance beam. I'm sorry, walk the plank. And
crash in the water.
Into the big crash pad. Shoot the cannon with a weighted ball. They would try to spell out their names, which are letters on stickies on a wall.
And they'll stick to the ball if they hit it.
Some kids didn't have a weighted ball. It depended on the kids. But yeah, we adapted for different ones. Some just aimed for the wall. It didn't really matter. And then at the end, the final thing when you complete all your tasks is dig for buried treasure. And then, of course, cut out your badge, because once you've completed this, you want to let everybody know that you have done this. So all these skills are embedded. It's great for assessments as well, because you're walking through and they're fully engaged. So they're working at their full capacity due to the high level of motivation and the social aspect. Of course, we dress up.
Yeah, of course. And so Jill's taking the picture because she's not there.
She probably had to leave, and this was at the end because, you know,
Gotcha.
Jill worked the whole school.
That's true.
Poor OTs never get the credit in the very end.
Yeah, that's right. She didn't make the picture. So, and I'm sorry, I keep having to mute one of you, and Judy, it ends up being you a lot. But I wanted to show like the other stuff that we've seen that people have done with OTs have done with LessonPix. Another big one is here. So much of our sensory stuff that Jill uses, we've got in LessonPix. So if you look, let me show briefly. If you look back to LessonPix for a second, down here under occupational therapy, there's a whole section.
Yeah, very rarely do I have to add a picture or try to combine an image of sensory stuff. And that's a huge time saver because we use some pretty unique, different tools.
Right. We have some really weird swings, right? We've got like every swing we've seen, Lori has drawn it one way. Isn't there a whole section on swings?
There is a folder for
There's
swings.
a whole section on swings.
Yep, because we've got a ton of different kinds of swings.
Right. I mean,
and there's way more.
There's so many. Then there's the sensory section. There's all the small ball activities, the stretch band. All of these things are all things that the OTs and a lot of the PTs as well use that we've drawn and you've drawn. We've drawn.
I was going to say we really.
We've drawn. It's the royal we.
Bill drew one.
I didn't. I drew more than one. I did all the stickmen.
Okay, there you go.
So I have drawn one. If you look up Bill, I drew Bill. That's the one she's talking about. We actually had a thing at our house where we had everybody in our family draw themselves. So Allie drew Allie, but she was 7. So you can't judge her drawing by it. But yeah, so now I'll show you Bill. I'm very proud of Bill. So there he is, right? So come on, I drew that. He looks like a LessonPix guy. Big head.
Blue shirt. You can take the black and white version and put a green shirt on him.
Hey, I can just go into recolorize.
This was pre-green shirt.
Pre-green shirt. I didn't have a
blue shirt too.
Then, but we can fix that. This
was a long time ago.
There you go. You got a green shirt. There you go.
Hey.
Right? There you go. Now I have Bill in a green shirt, which is exactly what I should look like. So we drew this. We drew 60,000 symbols. I drew one, and you drew 59,999. So I think that's fair. We should be a we, right?
I'm staying out of that fight there.
So I think we've covered a lot. Is there anything that you guys want to make sure that all the LessonPix users know, whether it's where to find out more about OTs, whether it's anything that you guys want to share? Let's do Judy first. Do you have anything, or do you think we've covered it all?
Well, I think you've done an amazing job, and certainly the only place I can think of that that people could find out a little bit more about OT is just going and putting AOTA in their browser. And there's a lot of tip sheets for families there because we go from birth to death. There's something for everyone: middle age, cognitive difficulties, mental health. There's a lot of information right now on our response to COVID. So the AOTA site does keep current. So that would be the one place that I would mention, other than the fact that, again, LessonPix has so many things that can be modified to make them hands-on, to make them interactive. Clothespins and paper clips and wiki sticks and pipe cleaners and beads can make any of the printables interactive. And then they can also, I don't know that you talked enough about, and I'll let Alyssa take over, about all the interaction that can be on screen. So it can be paper-based or it can be screen-based.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've done a lot more of that over the last year, right? So with COVID, we had to be remote. We added all of the additions to the PowerPoint stuff. So it has definitely grown.
And I did have a question about COVID, and I guess that ties in with the screen as well, is have you increased more of the self-help side of OT as far as, keeping your mask on or hand washing and those processes, or staying distant? That's another aspect that probably has increased with COVID.
Yes, and you have some nice visuals for that. You have some mask wearing, and this was not prompted. It's just, the site just covers about everything. And it's because the site really belongs to the users, and they develop they develop the things that they need. You've given them the tools and they've taken them and run with them. So now mute me, Bill, and let Alyssa talk.
You keep saying that, and then you keep talking.
I do.
But you keep letting me. So
I keep muting Alyssa by mistake.
I keep starting to speak, and then I see I'm muted. So no, I think Judy covered it really well. But I think the one thing I would say that maybe we've discovered even over this last year is that I've talked to a lot of other places where they're using LessonPix where they hadn't necessarily thought to include their OTs in having access. And I think it's because when they think LessonPix, sometimes I see the A to B to C thinking. They think LessonPix, they think visuals, they see the, sound finder, they think speech, and they don't necessarily jump to all of those things and more that I showed you that we've talked about that are really OT applicable. Even pre-COVID were OT applicable. And right. I think just that would be my encouragement. Like if you're watching this and your organization does have access to LessonPix, chances are your OT, even a high school OT, working in high schools would benefit. Transition, supports would absolutely benefit from having access to it.
Yep. I do have something to show that I'm not sure that Judy knows. Maybe she does. But look, I can, did you know that I can actually throw a mask on any picture? I can make any picture we have a mask on it like that.
We used it a lot on photos as well. I made a matching book with my students here in the therapy center where they had to match the photo of the child with the photo of the child wearing a LessonPix mask. And that was very cute to see them figure it out.
Bill in mask.
Bill in mask.
And look, I got him in a green shirt wearing a mask. He's being good. He's in the uniform. He's wearing the mask. It's all good, right? And so then he just shows up as a LessonPix symbol.
You're so funny.
So
you're going to use that now.
I'll use that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And while you're on the website, Bill, I would also encourage them to look at the articles. You guys have done a great job of summarizing. It's where I sent some of our OTs really quickly. Beth did a training with everybody, but then as follow-up, I've kind of sent them that exact page that's like, hey, if you were thinking about working on executive function, your fine motor, here are some ideas, not the be all and end all, but like here are some jumping off points for you if you're not sure how or where to begin.
Yeah, and actually you just spruced this up. This one? Yes? Is this part of the spruce up for the ESSER thing?
No.
No. Never mind. It will be.
And now it will
be. No.
No, it does need some sprucing up. There is additional, there's always more information to add. Again, it's just an overview of just the highlights of how LessonPix can meet this. Really, honestly, the Sharing Center is a great place to start when you're looking for ideas.
Yep.
To see what people have done.
We can see what Alyssa has done.
Oh, stop.
You can go in here and just search
look
for
at her.
Where's at?
ED, no, we're an EDAT. You just flip some letters. There's only, I think, one
only
thing.
Shared one thing?
I know, I'm a slacker. I told you, but I knew that one was in the Sharing Center.
You did. It is. And it's well written. So, all right.
Excellent.
Anyway.
The thing I like about that math one, Alyssa, is you could use it for a mini office too. If you made it small, you could have the student could have a customized mini office with that that plus cue that you did. So again, the ramifications are endless of what you can do.
Can the engineer ask something stupid?
Sure.
Mini office.
2 file folders glued together that make a study carrel, and every child can have their own cues. So if somebody's working on left and right, like I always was, I couldn't tell my left from my right, they're right there on the mini office, and maybe alphabetical order or counting by 5. So they can customize that office, and the office can be set up as a privacy carrel. And these are especially great during the time that kids are working from home, because they don't always have those resources. And it's hard to pull up all those hints from the internet all at once.
Right. Yep.
That's a great idea.
It's a really good idea.
Yeah, I like
that little mini office. What's nice is that they, giving this kids an opportunity to kind of take ownership of part of it and say, where do you want this to go? What do you think you're going to look at most, or what do you look at most in your notebook that we're going to put in this mini office? What color do you want it to be? In terms of empowering them to take ownership about using it, so that when it is time for them to work on math, you're not saying, get out your thing, get out your thing, get out your thing. It's like, oh, I want to get out my mini office because A, I had a part in building it, and B,
Yes.
it has the tools and the places that work for me from my toolbox.
Very cool.
And when you're talking about picking out colors, don't forget to mention your high contrast symbols, because those are really important
We're
too.
going to sell all of our features
I love
tonight.
it.
I love it.
Judy, I am with you on the left and right thing, because as a teacher, I would model left and right constantly backwards. So now whenever, I even think of the cha-cha slide we did a lot, to the left, I would always have to mirror it. And therefore he would say, turn left. And I'm like, to the left. Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I
And
know
they've done
we
that.
covered this in previous, but like high contrast doesn't have to be just for
low vision.
learners who are low vision or have CVI.
That's right.
Yep.
Just bringing out those salient features for kids who are learning about what feelings look like, or, what me looks like on that black background. It's just another, our kids are bombarded by visual distraction all day, every day. And I know screen time has not helped. So in terms of being able to just really pull out the things that are important for them, whether it's they're learning sign language as someone is a member of the deaf community, or just because it's a good way to sign, it's just so much more. Literally the contrast is so wonderful because of the contrast.
Right. No,
Great point.
I agree. And I think for those of you who don't know, we have first, all the core pictures are in here as high contrast now. But in addition, you can take any of our symbols, like even ones that have nothing to do with core words, like this tortoise, or any of them, this llama. You choose any picture. Under here, you can now go in and say, give me a high contrast. You can say, give me a black background first. And then I can add the high contrast filters, and it will make it a high contrast llama. Any picture we have in our entire library can be made high contrast. It adds a black background, a white outline. It fully saturates and cranks up the brightness so that all of these symbols are easier to see, easier to spot, and on a black background. The ones in the core you manually then went in and tweaked to make sure that they were perfect. But it is really great that you can kind of pick anything and make it a high contrast symbol. You need a high contrast mad apple. That's
everybody needs
more
that.
than anything. We definitely
you do
need
love mad feelings. You gravitate
I
toward
do gravitate towards
Mad Santa and the
Right.
Mad Frog.
So he's great.
Mad.
Mad Santa.
And the great thing about virtual is that you can use high contrast images without having to expend the ink. If you're using it digitally, you can insert these into stories, or you can do all the 50,000 things we can do with images. And just even putting them on a black background, you saw the difference before he even applied the high contrast filter. I think just having those options, and again, in the digital world, being able to have those options and not expend all the ink, sometimes makes it a little bit easier to justify doing it for kids who aren't low vision or have CVI.
Yeah. So we do have one question,
Actually,
and we're gonna.
It's just asking, do we work with anybody?
It is. It's really a question for you and I more than these guys. So the question is, it's from Casey. It's Casey. Do you work with do you have any actually autistic or other non-speaking individuals consulting with you as you develop these supports? Highly recommended. Well, indirectly, no. Indirectly, yes. But we should, But we should add. So I understand your point. I understand the movement that is out there that says, nothing about us without us and things like that. We have a ton of feedback from actually autistic people, not necessarily with a hashtag, of things that we need. Believe me, it's daily that we get something that is missing and that is being asked for.
And that's how our content grows.
Right.
Is
All
by,
of it comes in by request.
By request, yes.
As far as individual consultants, should we? Perhaps. I have in my head, I have a person I would love to work with who works with my daughter right now. She's out in Arizona. But I understand the question. We do not have direct consultants that we hire and work with like we do others. But I think it's not a bad idea. I don't know exactly how to find those folks. Maybe you can post that after the commentary. Let's put these folks back in. Do you guys have any feedback on this? Have either of your groups brought in folks from kind of the organizations who are more advocacy on the autism side of the not doing ABA and things like that? Do you guys bring anybody in Alachua or Judy? Have you worked with anybody like that?
So what has been kind of naturally occurring is that because I have kids that I started with when they were 3 who have now graduated high school, and I have not been in the profession uber long, but we have this length of kids that now are able to give us lots of information about their experiences, whether they are actually autistic, autistic adults now, whether they're kids that have more significant physical disabilities, and gathering those user experiences to me is like uber powerful and is really the only way for us to really get authentic feedback about whether the services we're providing as an OT, AT, whatever, are really making a difference. So I think gathering those user voices and having them propel, whether it's how I approach working with somebody in the future who has a similar diagnosis or what, we haven't necessarily brought in direct. I think we're kind of using our in-house consultants in that respect to help guide and inform our practice as our kids age out. I've been doing exit interviews with some of our students about their AT experience, their OT experience, and that has been really powerful data.
Yeah. Judy, have you talked with anybody in this area?
She's muted.
Oh, geez. I'm sorry, but if I don't mute Judy or Alyssa, they fight on the echo. So I'm trying.
I would just echo what Alyssa has said. My experience has been primarily, I worked for Loudoun County for 26 years. And so I met a lot of individuals that I followed throughout their school career and beyond, because I lived in the community where they went to school. But I hope this doesn't sound patronizing, Casey, but good for you for asking, because I think it is important that that we inquire as consumers, as people who want participation. It's important to have a voice and to bring up when we don't feel that something is represented appropriately or that all viewpoints have been considered. But I think sometimes we don't do that. So I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked as well. And I hope we answered it to to what you were hoping to get. I'm not sure it's the answer you wanted to get from us, but I hope we answered the question. I don't think we have any other questions. I'm looking on YouTube and Facebook, and I think we're good.
Yeah.
People like you, but that's not surprising. People on Twitter are excited that you're on another show together.
We've kind of been making the circuits, and again, to my absolute pleasure, I've had the opportunity to hang out with Judy and be working with people with ergonomics over the last year. And so yes, any opportunity I get to be in the same cyberspace and hopefully eventually personal space area with Judy, I will jump at it for sure.
So you might be seeing some LessonPix ergonomics charts and checklists pretty quick.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I need them.
You guys would be proud of me. I have a standing desk here. All right, we have
but we're sitting.
Like you're sitting. I'm the same height. If we're not sitting, we're not going to be.
I won't
Yeah.
in the frame together. But
The height difference. Yeah, I understand.
We got to fix
We
that.
look close when we're
Yep.
sitting.
Yep.
You can-
No one would have ever.
There you go. There you go.
That's just me now.
You can just fix this. There
All
you go.
right.
There you go.
Yeah, that's more realistic.
That's more realistic.
Mm.
There you go. All right. All right. I think we're good. I think we're out of time. We're over.
Thank you guys.
You guys are the best.
so
Thank you
much.
for
Thank
jumping
you.
in at such short notice. I know I throw these things at you quickly, and you always come through. So
But I'm
thank
really
you.
glad we got to talk OT.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
and we
Before
almost-
the end of OT month, just by the smidge.
I lost the beginning. I lost
429.
2 weeks.
Understandable. We are very
Yeah.
happy to represent OT and share because hopefully it comes off as obvious that we really do love what we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Judy can't
certainly.
stop doing it. She loves it so much.
That's right. So she's doing it while retired. That's just sad.
Fabulous.
It is fabulous. I'm just stuck low now.
You did it.
Oh,
Natural consequences.
I keep shrinking. All right. So I'm a smart ass and it kicks me. All right. So I appreciate it, guys. Thanks very much. I'm gonna
Thank you.
If you guys have any questions, both Alyssa and Judy, follow us and they will see if you because they're tagged in this post. They will see any comments. They will get back to you and answer them on Facebook. If anything comes in on YouTube, I will send it to you. And obviously, you're both on Twitter at Wernadat. And Judy, you are Judy Schoonover 3.
At Judith Schoonove. It stops at the V because you can't have that long of a name. And we're number 3 because Twitter kicked me out of my first account. So whatever. I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything bad. It was just I retired and my Twitter.
It's like you and Donald
password.
Trump. Like, there's the only 2 I know.
I know. Well, my password was linked with my school address or something, I think, and I couldn't retrieve my password. And they send the email to my school email. I shouldn't have used my school email. So whatever.
I've done that.
You're all good. All right, guys. Thank you very much. I'm gonna say goodbye to all of our fans out there, and I will talk to y'all later. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.
Good day.